Hey guys, Emmanuel here, and the second round of the NBA playoffs are underway, and we've got one of the best matchups recently. So we've gotten the Mavericks versus the Suns. Great matchup. First of all, before we go any further, let's just take a minute to acknowledge just how wonderful of matchups we've gotten in this year's playoffs. I think this year's playoffs is better than last year's playoffs. First of all, I just watched a thriller of a game last night when the Warriors played the Grizzlies and Warriors won by 1 point. And then also, Giannis showed out against the Celtics. Like, it's crazy. I'm really enjoying the playoffs this year, and I hope you are too. But anyways, back to the topic at hand. The topic at hand today is, can Luka and the Mavericks advance past the Phoenix Suns, the best team supposedly in the league? Now, Luka and the Mavericks just cruised past the Utah Jazz. They won in 6 games. It wasn't really that hard of a matchup for them, but the series was important for me because I got to evaluate how good the Mavericks are, and furthermore, more importantly, I got to evaluate how good they are without Luka, right? Because that team goes as Luka goes, and Luka didn't play for 3 games out of the 6 that they played, but they played pretty well. Good enough to the point where they could win in 6 games. And that was really helpful for me because I really got to gauge and measure just how good the Mavericks are compared to everybody else that's left in the playoffs, right? Because I didn't get to watch a lot of Mavericks games during the season, so this was very helpful. One thing I took away from that series was the Mavericks, when push comes to shove, when backed into a corner, they play really good defense. And because of that, they deserve to be here in the second round. But here's the thing, the second round isn't the first round, and it's harder than the first round, obviously. And they drew the best team in the league in the Phoenix Suns, so they have some work cut out for them, right? And the Phoenix Suns are going to be a challenge for them, like they would be a challenge for anybody. So how do they stack up against the Phoenix Suns? How good are they? And what are their chances of going and actually advancing past the Suns and getting into the next round? Well, for starters, I'd say they have a pretty average chance of moving on to the next round. I'd probably peg them at 40 to 45% chance of winning this series. Phoenix is obviously the favorites to win this series, rightfully so. They're the first seed overall in the NBA, and they were in the finals last year. Like, yes, they deserve to be the favorites, but to what extent are they favorites? I think it's a 40-60 split in favor of the Phoenix Suns. I think it's a pretty fair chance. It's a pretty good chance. It's not too bad. It's not too high. Right sweet spot. But the reason I give them this chance is because of a number of factors. One factor is that last series, the Suns didn't particularly play well against the Pelicans, right? The Suns struggled to put away a Pelicans team that they probably should have swept, right? The Pelicans were a play-in tournament team, right? Granted, I'm going to give the Suns, some slack. I'm going to cut them some slack. Devin Booker didn't play some of the games, so it might have taken them a lot of the games. But what it took for the Suns to advance was it took Chris Paul playing a perfect game in the last game, in Game 6, in order for them to advance. That shouldn't have been the case for the Suns if they were playing a play-in tournament. So they didn't look as menacing as the #1 seed overall in the NBA should look. So that's one of the factors that I think elevates the chances of the Mavericks, advancing to the next round. And speaking of Devin Booker missing some of the games in the last series, let's talk about Devin Booker. Now, Devin Booker returned, right, in the last series, but he didn't play a lot of minutes, right? He was on minute restrictions. Obviously, he got some rest, but I don't think that Monty Williams is going to play him to the max amount of minutes that he can play him, right? I think he's still going to not be there for the Suns at 100%. And that's a factor I have to take in. And the Suns, I think they're going to need everything to beat the Dallas Mavericks. Like, they needed everything in order to beat the Pelicans. The Mavericks are significantly better than the Pelicans, so they're going to need everything from their players to beat the Mavericks. Devin Booker not being able to play max minutes, like 48 minutes if he needs to when push comes to shove, that's going to be detrimental. So that's one of the factors that elevates the Mavericks' chances of winning the series, and that's why I give them a 40% chance of advancing to the next round, because if the Suns were completely there, 100%, I think it would be a completely different ballgame. Also, the Suns can't play Chris Paul the majority of games. Chris Paul's playing below 30 minutes a game. He's playing below 30 minutes a game in the playoff series because he's old. He's like 36, right? Yeah, and the Suns need him, like need him, right, in order to advance. They don't go anywhere without Chris Paul. He needed to play a perfect game in order for them to advance in Game 6 against the Pelicans. And so if the Suns could get like 110% from all the players, if they could play Chris Paul like 40 minutes, maybe 38 minutes, it's a different ballgame. It'd be a completely different ballgame. I'd have to lower the chances of Mavericks moving on. Luka also missed a lot of games in the last series, but he returned. and played 3 games in the last series, and he got his legs, warmed up in that last series, and he was rested. Then the next round started. So he's got a pretty good balance. And speaking of Luka, let's get to Luka. One of the major reasons why the chances of the Dallas Mavericks, for me, is at 40% is because of Luka Doncic. Why? Because simply put, Luka Doncic is better than Devin Booker. Luka Doncic is the best player out of both teams, right? Now, the Suns do have Chris Paul, and in my opinion, Chris Paul is the second best player out of both teams. Not because of his agility, not because he can score the most, but because he has the most experience, and he's so clutch when you need him to be. Like, when push comes to shove, right, he's so clutch. Like take into account playing a perfect game. That was needed, right? Push came to shove, right? You didn't want to go back to Phoenix to play Game 7 against the Pelicans, and he shot a perfect game, 14 of 14. He played a perfect game, aside from the 3 turnovers, but still, that is really good. So to me, he's the second best player on both teams. But the thing is, having the best player matters, right? And the Dallas Mavericks have the best player in the series. And the thing is, I've seen Luka single-handedly give nightmares to offenses in the playoffs. For instance, last year in the playoffs against the Clippers, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard were struggling to stay in front of Luka Doncic. And those two guys are considered 2 of the best two-way players and defenders. And I know for a fact, Phoenix doesn't have anybody that has that type of defense, that caliber of a defensive player that can measure up to Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. So good luck to the unlucky guy that's going to have to guard Luka Doncic all series long. It's going to be a long series for you. But yeah, that is what I think of the series, and I got to actually get a glimpse of the series, Game 1. And what I say is a glimpse of the series because it's just Game 1, it's not the rest of the series. And this is what I saw so far, right? What I saw from the Dallas Mavericks, I didn't like, right? It was very conducive with what I said. Mediocre tier chances of advancing to the next round, right? It wasn't spectacular. It wasn't terrible, but it was meh, right? First of all, they came into Phoenix and they were not ready for Phoenix. The game started and the Mavericks looked completely flat, while the Suns looked like they were ready to take off and they were ready to just roll and get to the next round. And the major takeaway I took from that was the Dallas Mavericks didn't show up defensively. That is their Achilles heel. They had the offensive power to win this game. It was just their defense sucked. Right? Their defense completely sucked. And on offense, they were a little bit flat, not too flat, right? When I say they were a little bit flat is because nobody, aside from Luka, scored 20 points or more. In fact, Luka had to score 45 points, 12 rebounds, and 8 assists just for them to stay in the game. You can't keep doing that. Someone has to at least give you 20 some odd points, right? But even then, right, they still scored 112 points, right? So they could have won this game. If they had clamped down defensively, they could have easily won this game because they didn't have a particularly good showing when it comes to offense, but they still managed to score over 110 points. So that's pretty good. That's the bright side for them. But if the Mavericks want to win the series, they have to step up defensively. Their defense was good in the last series against the Utah Jazz, but it wasn't good in Game 1. And the reason I think that was because watching them, I saw no sense of urgency. There was no sense, and maybe it's because it's Game 1, and maybe it's because they, just kind of steamrolled the Utah Jazz so badly that they were just kind of nonchalant when they came into Phoenix, but Phoenix is not Utah, right? So you have to have a sense of urgency because that sense of urgency is going to bleed into your intensity and you're going to play better defense. And that's what I didn't see from the Dallas Mavericks. And through that, it led to Luka having to score 45 points just for them to keep up with the amount of scoring that the Phoenix Suns were doing. That's not sustainable. He's gonna get tired. He can't keep doing that every game. So you have to step up on defense as a unit, to clamp down on the Suns so you can give your chance at winning. Now, it is just Game 1, right? Like, it was 114 to 121, so they lost by like 7 points. So it wasn't a blowout. It's expected to, the Suns' home court advantage, they were going to at least win one game. So the first game, there's no surprise, right? But just the takeaway was, I need to see some sense of urgency from the Dallas Mavericks. I need them to intensify on defense, and that is my takeaway from the series. And I'm looking forward to see where the series goes. This doesn't change my ranking, my chances of them moving to the next round. I still give them a 40% chance. But yeah, those are just my thoughts, guys. If you're new to this channel, this is League Talk. My name is Ben Emmanuel Camia, and if you like this kind of content, make sure to hit the subscribe button, leave a like for the algorithm, and drop your thoughts down in the comments below, and click here to watch the truth behind why the Jazz lost to the Mavericks. And until next time, kids.